Hey guys, Ariel over here at Nyth. Today I'm going to talk about my generator. That's my generator's own little tiny house. I do have my main source of power being the solar panels, which are up the hill there, and those lines, the line coming into the house and down around here is where it goes in to the batteries. But there are days like today when you can see there's snow on the ground, but the sky is just about the same color. It is just gray, 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 snowing off and on, and you just don't get a whole lot of sunlight when that happens. And that does happen here. Quite a bit in the middle of winter. Also, the days are really short right now, and the sun, even if the sun is out, it rises around 8:30 at my house and sets by about 3. Partly because of the mountains, partly because I'm so far north. So I do have a little generator that I use for backup. This is a Champion, write the name there. It's a 1500 watt, starting 1200 running. Works to be a perfect size for what my needs are. I've been using this for quite a few years now, and it's extremely easy to use. I do have to do a little bit of regular maintenance, and the main thing with that is changing oil. Now, just because it's a little chilly out here and it's handier and I've got access to it, I do usually take it over to my neighbor's shop to change the oil there. I can do it here. I've done it before, especially if the weather's nicer, but it's just easier to put it in the van and go over there and work where it's inside and I've got a table and it's warm. So that's one of my regular maintenance things, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Okay, so like I said, guys, I usually, because it's available to me and it's warm and it's nice, bring my generator over to my neighbor's shop to change the oil. It's not complicated at all. I do try to do this about every, maybe every 100 hours of running. I know some people say they do theirs every 50 hours. Anywhere in between there is probably good. I'm gonna find an oil bucket set up for all this. So what I'm doing is just loosened up, and I'm screwing out this little pin in the oil drain here. You do want to make sure that is tight when you put it back in. I've got some dirty oil coming out. One time I forgot to tighten it up the whole way when I was done. I put fresh oil in, took it back up to my place, fired it up, ran for a couple hours, and the vibration rattled that little drain pin the whole way out. All the oil drained onto the floor of my generator box, and thankfully it shut off because it's got a little oil shut off, and so it did not ruin anything. But you do want to make sure when you are done that you've got that tightened up. Now, I usually tip this at a little bit of angle to make that drain just a little quicker, and then I'm going to fill it back up with clean oil. So in the meantime, I can open up these. There's two, balance it there, two of these little plugs, one on each side. Clean them off. Back here. I don't know exactly what this generator weighs, but it's not light, but it's certainly something I can pick up and move around. It's mostly kind of awkward because it's a little bit bulky. It's hard to carry it nice and tight to your body, but it works for me, and I'm not that crazy strong. And I'm just going to let it go till it quits trickling. And he's got a oil bin here for used oil, a big drum where that's going to go, which is handy because other things need oil changes in the shop as well. Now, this is, as I said, a little Champion generator. It's very affordable. I do use mine very regularly, and it works really well for me. You could get a Honda generator. There's actually one sitting on the floor right here. My neighbor's got one. I have used it before when I was first getting everything figured out. I had very first moved into my place and didn't have my whole setup going yet. He had loaned it to me, and the Honda is a little quieter for sure. I wouldn't say this one's twice as loud, maybe a third louder. It's not a big deal for me. In that little box, the sound is pretty muffled. I don't have any neighbors anywhere close by to be bothered by it. Looks like that's it on the oil draining. Wipe this up here. It drips. And as I said, I'm going to put this back in and make sure it's screwed tight. So the Honda is a little quieter. It also, for basically the same size of generator, is going to cost you almost $800 more. The little bit of extra quiet is not worth it for me. If you are regularly in very populated areas like an RV park or something like that, it might be worth it. I realize that. It's just, for me, it is not. And the extra expense just isn't worth it. The other thing that's worth noting, and Honda does make really good stuff. I've used Honda water pumps and Honda snow blowers and all kinds of things. But the one thing I've noticed with their smaller generator that's a comparable size to this is that it doesn't start well in very cold weather. Now mine often starts on the second, sometimes third pull, and that's okay with me. The Honda will usually start on the first pull, which is what a lot of people like, and as I said, Honda does make really good gear. But what I've noticed is when it's really, really cold, like we're talking below zero, so if you don't live where it gets below zero, this may never be an issue for you. But if you do, be aware that at times, the Honda would not start at all. I would have to bring it in the house and let it warm up to room temperature before it would even try to fire up. And this guy, even down to negative 30 something, has always started. So that's a pretty big plus for being the cheaper model. Also, one thing I like is that this does have a little gas gauge. I'll show you what that looks like, but the Honda does not have that either. And I really like being able to see how much gas I've got left in my generator. Dump my used oil. Funnel here. Put my clean oil in. I just use a good 1030. That seems to work really well for me all year round, actually. And this oil tank is not very big, so I add this a little bit slowly. Make sure it don't overflow. You can see on the back one there, you know, when it starts to get full. Almost. And as I said, I do change this about every 100 hours. So that does mean that in the summer it'll go months and I won't change it because I almost never use this in the summer at all. And in the winter, at times like this, there are times when I will change it much, much more frequently, but still about the same amount of hours of use on the machine. I'm trying to be all careful for the camera and not overflow it, because I often do. And I'm being a little overly cautious, it seems. There we go. I can see the oil filling up into the little spout on the other side. Make sure that's all drained out. Try not to waste it. And just in case you're wondering, Grizzly is standing right over there. She's probably out of the camera, but she's tagging along with me for all my projects. So, full of nice fresh oil. Screw these little caps back in. And most of the time, that's all I do. The one other maintenance thing, I guess there's two other maintenance things that I do not do every time, but that are good to check, especially as the generator gets older and has a lot of hours on it, and this one certainly does. I've had this one for, I kind of fried my very first one after a year because I was still getting used to how to use a generator. And even that had a ton of hours on it, but because I was still getting my solar set up and everything. But the second one has had no issues yet, but as they get a little older. One other thing I do check some here is the spark arrestor. I've not had a problem at all with it on this generator, but my first one when it started dying as it aged, would get plugged up. I don't think a new one should do it anytime soon. You know, it should be good for a long time. But this is a good thing to check. There's just 2 little screws. Loosen up. This is the exhaust end of the generator, the main exhaust. Our main engine is there and the exhaust comes out through here. And a spark arrestor is obviously from its name to keep you from getting any sparks coming out of there. Now I've found that popping that out can be just a little tricky. It's helpful to have something nice and thin. To get the wedge in there because it sits in there really tight. And this is probably time to do it. I got a little bit of crud out there, so it's just this little screen kind of sieve. There's not much in there. Tap it out. Tip this up. There's a few flakes in there, more than I was expecting. As I said, with my other one, when it got older, it started to get plugged, and I'd actually take a little wire bristle brush and really gently brush that off. But this is not really plugged. I can see through the screen the whole way around. So we're going to say that's good to go. Put it back in there and just secure it again with these 2 little screws. So that's not something I check every single time I change the oil, but every now and then it is, especially as the generator ages. In my experience, it seems a good thing to check on every now and then. Be sure it's not getting plugged up with just little bits of soot and such. I'm no generator expert at all. These are just the things I've learned about my particular one here to keep it running well and running smoothly and doing what I need it to do, and hopefully get as long a life as possible out of it. Let's tighten those both back up there. Okay, then the final thing, I'm going to flip this around so the camera can see it, is on this end. This is where your starter is and stuff. There's an air filter. This also, just like the spark arrestor, I find needs cleaned a little more as the machine ages. But it's just got these 2 little hand twist, kind of plastic headed screw thingies on here. The choke is right above here. Just gonna pop those out. And this cover comes off, and then you've got this air filter here. This one seems to have always gotten a little bit of oil into the air filter. I don't know why. My last one didn't seem to do that at all. But this one has it from day one, and it seems to run okay. I don't know if that means there's a little leak in this particular one, or if they all normally do that. My first one just didn't. I'm not sure, but it works. But you can see there's some oil in there. So, and this piece actually comes out as well. Just gonna wipe that out, and I'm actually gonna go over to the sink and rinse this out and then dry it really well. I don't want to put it back in there with any moisture at all that's going to ice up. So I'm gonna go clean that. Be right back. Okay, so I've washed this out. I just put just a tiny bit of dish soap in there and just kind of gently massage it and you know, rinse it out very thoroughly with warm water, and then rolled it in a towel and blotted it dry. So pop this back together, and when I've taken this out, it doesn't always want to stay put in there. So I have to remember which way this thing goes. The other way, of course. Gotta be careful you get it, you know, kind of lined up back in there. And then this just screws back on really easy. So that's my full round of generator maintenance. The oil change, that's the thing I do all the time. And the checking the oil filter and the spark arrestor every now and then will just, it seems to help extend the life a little bit. And even though these aren't a terribly pricey machine, I want to get as much use out of it as possible. There's like the little quote that I heard growing up that, you know, the way to be responsible or not be broke or whatever in life is to, if I remember it right, use it up, wear it out, make do or do without. So that's how I approach a lot of things in my life. Just dust off some of the dust that gets on there. This is all ready to go. I'm gonna load it up in my van, go back up to my place, and show you how I fire it up. Okay, so now that I've got my oil changed and all my other maintenance done, I'm going to fill this up with gasoline. The other important thing I've learned is that for very small engines, like generators in general, you do not want to use any kind of gas that has ethanol in it. There's water in the ethanol, and I'm no mechanic, but what I'm told is that that makes cruddy stuff happen to them and they don't last nearly as long. So we do have one gas station locally that sells only ethanol free, and that is always where I fill my gas cans for use in generators and other small engines. It is a little bit more expensive, but a lot cheaper than buying a new generator and worrying about constant extra maintenance issues. So I'm just going to fill this up. There we go. And just keep my little fuel funnel right off on the side of my generator's tiny house. Close that up and put the gas away. This goes back in the shed over here. And you can see what I was going to show you earlier. This, unlike the Honda, does have a little fuel gauge. You can see the red bar is the whole way across. That means it's clear full. When there's no bar or it's going this way, that is empty. And I do that little piece of tape is I just sometimes remember to make notes about when I did my last oil change. Now in this box, that's the exhaust end. That's why there's that big nice hole on that end to let all the fumes out. But the reason I made this box in the first place is because when I first started, I just had a tarp over the generator, and when it was running, I of course had to move the tarp so it wouldn't melt, but then it would snow on the generator, and the heat from it running would melt the snow, and it would trickle down into stuff on the engine, and that didn't seem to bother it until I would turn it off, and it would cool, and it would ice up, and then it wouldn't start again. So that is the reason it got its own little tiny house here, but you also don't want it to get too hot. So my neighbor helps me build these handy little props that go on the edge there and keep the lid up at just a bit of an angle. Now to start, it's kind of hard to see, but the on-off switch is right there, so that's on. The choke is right here, that's right on top of the air filter. And like I said, this usually starts on the second pull. We'll see what it does. It's running. Close my lid. The little flap keeps snow from getting inside, but the prop lets plenty of air vent so nothing gets overheated in there. Then I just going to come inside and, oh, somebody asked to see what my swags look like once I hang them up by the doors. There you go, either side. Got some icicles stuck on that one. But we're gonna go in here and turn on the charger. Okay, so inside here, if you guys have lots more questions about my power setup in general, I do have a video on covering all of that. I'll link that below. This is more about the generator. So my couch lifts up just like that. I can take that lid the whole way off if I really need to, but I've got a little prop so I can prop it up. And right under here is my charge controller from the generator. There's a separate charge controller from the solar panels. So from the generator, those lights are not lit up unless the generator is running, but nothing is charging right now. It's just telling me they're at 12.1 volts or 12.0. Press that little button and it starts. First it's going to start at 10 amps, that last number over there on the right. It runs at 10 amps for a minute while it warms up, and then it will go up to 25 amps until the battery bank is full enough that it starts to count down again. And it'll run 25 amps to bulk charge it, and then go, counts down gradually to fill it up the rest of the way without overcharging. And the little lights on the side here will climb up 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all go solid, and I'll know it's full. These zeros just tell me how long it's been running. Doesn't mean anything about how full it is or not, but I can tell how long this has been turned on. So that's all I do to maintain and use my generator when we have got cloudy winter days like this outside, when it's just gray, and no sunlight to be had. Hopefully that's helpful if you're looking at generators or thinking out which one you need or how they work or how to take good care of them so they last as long as possible and all of that. Thanks for watching, folks. If you're interested in more info on my off-grid tiny house life, check out some of my other videos here. And if you like what you're seeing, click the little picture of my house to subscribe and then hit the little bell so YouTube actually notifies you every time there's a new video available. See y'all next time.